and welcome everyone to Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. My name is Nina Joshi and I am very excited about today's guest. Today we will be bringing on Mandy Mason, who is the Global Healthcare Strategy Lead at Microsoft. As you know, we love questions here on this episode, so if you have any for Mandy during our conversation, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen and I will make sure that we get to it. And so with that, we'd like to formally introduce our guest, Mandy. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting me to join you today.
Awesome. Well, I would love, of course, as a women's health tech webinar, we have to ask the question to kind of kick things off. What does women's health tech mean to you?
That's a great question. So I sometimes don't even consider myself to be in technology because my background has really been in business operations, finance, HR, strategy, and really just over the last 4 years or so have I started to get more involved on the tech side. So as our world is progressing and as we are integrating technology more and more into healthcare, I've kind of by default come into the tech side, although I still very much sit kind of at the intersection of operations, strategy, finance, and now technology. So I'm really excited to be learning so much more myself about technology and then incorporating those learnings into new solutions and offerings and ideas to really help innovate in the healthcare provider space.
I love that. This was actually a really great preamble to my next question, which is, I would just love if you could share with us a little bit more about yourself and your journey into the healthcare space. It seems like you have kind of had a very robust kind of career path that has landed you here.
Yeah, so when I graduated from college, I thought that I wanted to be a mortgage banker. I graduated college in 2008, which was in the middle of one of the worst housing crises we had ever had. So I spent about the first year bouncing around in some banking roles and quickly discovered that was not at all what I wanted to do. So then I was like, what next? Where do I go from here? And I found a financial analyst position open for a health system in the area that I lived in Savannah, Georgia. And so I joined the team and really almost instantly fell in love with the work that we were doing there. So I spent about 4 or 5 years at that health system, working in decision support, doing strategy, finance operations, doing a lot around productivity and workforce. Then I left and went to a different health system for a little while. Then I spent about 5 years in management consulting, also for workforce in the healthcare provider space. And then most recently, I was at Providence Health, where I was the executive director of workforce innovation. So I worked there for about 4 years, really connecting the dots on a lot of the technology and how we can and should be utilizing it in our business world, especially in the areas of workforce. Had a really great experience there at Providence and then ended up making the switch officially onto the tech side. And I've been with Microsoft now only for about 3 months, but really excited about the work that we are doing here to bring a lot of that forward-thinking technology into the healthcare industry where it's very much needed.
100%. That sounds like quite the career path. I love to see that. And then now kind of speaking to your current role, would love if you could just give us some insight into your position as the global solution or healthcare strategy leader. What are some of the things that or the initiatives that you have to kind of make an impact in this role?
Absolutely. So at Microsoft, we are constantly striving to bring more innovative solutions to our customers, whether they're healthcare, financial services, retail. Microsoft really spans all industries. And in the healthcare industry here, there's really been a focus as of late at Microsoft to get a lot of this great technology that we're already utilizing in other industries and apply it to healthcare. And so Microsoft brought me in. My role is to really kind of be the industry expert, having, come from 15 years in the healthcare space and doing this type of work for health systems really help Microsoft position the products and solutions that they have, and get those out as quickly as we can to healthcare customers across the US, but across the world. So we work with healthcare clients all across the globe. And then the most exciting part of my work that I think is I then get to work on what are new and exciting things that Microsoft can be doing in this space. And I love that, innovative white space where you can really think about the art of the possible. And I'm very, very fortunate to be at a place like Microsoft that embraces that mindset and really allows me the space to kind of work through what are some of those new cutting edge technologies going to be that will service the healthcare industry.
That's amazing. That, like, the fact that you can kind of think more creative, but also still like lean into the operational expertise that you have as well. Like that balance sounds incredible.
Absolutely. And that connection is so critical because
Mhm.
if you're on either side of it for too long, you lose sight of the other. I
Totally.
had a really fantastic mentor at the health system that I started at in Savannah. And I had no idea about healthcare or operations when I started there. And I asked her very naively, what is a charge nurse? And she was the CNO of the hospital. And she very quickly had me put on scrubs and go walk the halls and shadow a charge nurse. Rather than answer the question for me, she sent me out to figure it out on my own by literally walking in their shoes. And
That's
that
awesome.
is so critical to
Mhm.
understanding everything. So if you're on the operations side or the implementation side too much, you lose sight of that proactive vision of what can we and what should we be doing in the future. But at the same time, you have to tie that back to reality and where we're at now. So it's a really great balance to be able to live in both of those worlds.
Absolutely. And I love that your mentor like employed the idea of like learn by doing. So I think that's incredible. And kind of speaking of your role right now, and I think probably, what you've been seeing for the past couple of years, really this intersection between big tech and healthcare. Would love if you could share a little bit, how has big tech really contributed to the health tech space? What are some, whether it's projects or initiatives that you've seen that can really merge those two together?
Yeah, man. I love healthcare. I am committed. Until the day I retire, this is my passion. But it is also really, really frustrating how far behind healthcare is in technology. I mean, we
Mhm.
still use fax machines all the time, and all sorts of different workflows and processes we use. Where else in your normal day-to-day life outside of work do you ever use a fax machine? I
Right.
still use some DOS-based systems at some healthcare companies that I've worked at before. So there's so much work to be
Mhm.
done to really bring healthcare forward. And we're at such a critical time with our demand for patient care rising. Our patient population is aging, meaning they're going to be needing different kinds of care at the same
Mhm.
time that our talent pools are shrinking. So we have got to figure out how to digitize and improve and innovate our current workflows so that we can just keep up with the demand that we have. We should not have human beings faxing things to people, so there's so much work that can be done. And of course, who better to lead that work than one of the best tech companies in the entire world. And so Microsoft has spent a long time working on these really great solutions in other industries. And now we get to really bring forward a lot of that to healthcare and really help health systems where they need it the most.
That is amazing. And I think you bring up a really good point that I think is so common in the healthcare space of just this idea of variability. So a health system, even a hospital within a health system, everyone kind of does things so differently. So that can be really hard to implement change unless you have something that can really accommodate for that. And it seems like the work that you're doing is really kind of taking that into consideration, which I think is really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in legacy healthcare systems, from a business operations side, we count a visit as a visit and a patient day as a patient day, even
Mhm.
though we know as consumers and as patients that if we go to the emergency room and we have a gunshot wound versus if we go to the emergency room with a sore throat, we
Mhm.
would expect different levels of care and different types of service and
Right.
different resources for that care. So
Mhm.
we need to be using the data in the same way to make business operations decisions. There is so much variation in healthcare, and we can either look at that as a challenge or we can look at that as an opportunity and think about, wow, look at how specific and granular we can get with this data to really provide useful insights and
Mhm.
do things just in a lot more personalized manner, which is also what our patients are demanding and frankly what they deserve.
100%. I think I see that a lot too about this change of expectations and like the consumerization of healthcare. If I can get personalized attention with all these other aspects of my life, why can't I get it in something that is that much more valuable, like my health? So I love that is kind of really been your ethos when it comes to thinking about how to innovate. Want to kind of ask you, since I know you had mentioned that you have done a lot of work in the workforce aspect of healthcare, which I'm very curious about. And I would imagine, especially kind of in this, post-pandemic world, and I feel like the change has been brewing for some time in general, but, in your perspective, how has, what does the future of the workforce really look like in the healthcare space, given how all of these external and internal drivers have been shaping up so that there really is an opportunity for change?
Absolutely. So we are going to see a massive change in supply and demand of our workforce over the next 5 to 10 years. I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier that we have a real increased need. We're going to see retirements go to over 3 million every year, starting in 2025. We are seeing, so there's a significant aging population that we need to care for. We're also seeing a lot sicker patients than we used to. So we need to provide different types of care and in different settings. And we're
Mhm.
going to need to provide a lot more of it. At the same time, any article that talks about healthcare always brings up workforce and burnout and the great resignation. We have
Mhm.
seen talent pools shrinking in ways that we never expected. And when you add on top of that, the projections of just what the overall talent pool of available workers will be in the next 5 to 10 years, it starts to paint a really, really drastic picture, especially in US healthcare. So
Mhm.
we are looking at the levels that we see today in 2022, which is a great workforce crisis. By 2030, those are going to be anywhere from 150 to 300% worse than it
Wow.
is today. So we have got to make a lot of smart decisions about how do we automate away the manual repetitive tasks, the fax machines, all of those things that are really non-human value add, so that
Mhm.
we can have technology doing those things so that the humans can focus on the important stuff, because we don't want a doctor, we don't want a nurse having to spend 40% of their time on documentation outside of patient care. They
Right.
should be doing what is top of license for them, and that is taking care of patients. So it's going to be so critical to close that gap over the next couple of years, because the reality is the situation is just going to continue to get worse. And we have a
Mhm.
limited amount of time that we can make action now to really help mitigate that risk in the future.
Wow. I just hearing the stats about just, what we see right now and exactly to your point, I mean, I've definitely been seeing articles about the great resignation and just really the pain that a lot of people within the healthcare system are facing, and just to see that that's going to be that much worse is very shocking to me. What factors do you think will kind of influence the workforce for 2030? What are some of the drivers that are kind of causing this to just be that much more worse?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we have just a supply and demand issue, but on top of that, our caregivers, our employees are demanding flexibility. I had another great mentor that I worked with a lot at Providence who said flexibility is the new currency. And it's so true. As we have all learned, over the last couple of years living in a pandemic, what are the things that are most important to us? And that for so many people resonated in this work-life balance, or this need to have work fit into your life versus having your life fit around your work. And so I really don't even like the term work-life balance. I say it's a work-life integration, because there's going to be periods of time where you're going to be doing one more than the other, and that's okay. That's how humans work. And so that is a key critical factor that all health systems need to be thinking about, is how can we offer flexibility and really listening to their employees. What do you want? What's the white space for you? I love to ask people, if you have a magic wand and you can change one thing, but only one thing, what would it be? And that really helps people focus in on what is that top priority need that they have. And the executives and administrators across the health systems need to be listening to that. And they need to be listening to the economic influences that we're hearing across the world. And we need to make smart decisions about how we are going to address that flexibility within our workforce. You're either going to be on the forefront and on the cutting edge of it and getting all of the attractive talent, or you're going to be on the back end, and those are going to be the ones that are going to be the worst off, scrambling to figure out how they can provide care for their patients.
Right, absolutely. I love that you were kind of really talking about some of the strategies, like how can we, as healthcare organizations, be very thoughtful with what we're kind of offering. Flexibility is one of them. What are some other strategies that companies can use to kind of help prepare for this, and kind of, like you had mentioned, kind of be on top of it, besides things like flexibility? Are there any other areas of opportunity that you're seeing that companies should take into consideration when it comes to how to prepare and attract the best talent?
Absolutely. So I think there's a couple of other key things. One is this idea of re-architecting work. So we need to make the work more human. We need to eliminate those repetitive tasks. A lot of things that we do in healthcare is because we've always done them that way. We need to do a lot of real value analysis and only utilize humans to do the things that are the most value added to them. We're also going to have to get really creative about the workforce. And instead of thinking about things in certifications and degrees, we need to think about it from a skills and competency standpoint. So what we need to be looking at is seeing, there are these industries that are rapidly declining because of advances in technology or advances in sustainability. So manufacturing is a great one. Manufacturing industry is going to continue to decline over the next 10 years. How do we take manufacturing workers and move them into healthcare roles? What are those light skills and competencies that we can pull out, and then we can easily, upskill and reskill to get them to where they need to be? That's going to be the really creative thinking that health systems are going to have to do. There's a lot of great data that you can use to power all of that, which is kind of another key point. There is so much data within a health system right now, and health systems are only on average using around 5% of the data that they actually produce.
Wow, really?
Yes. So we need to be getting a lot better insights into the data that we already have. And a key piece of that, because there's always concerns around security when you're talking about patient privacy and all of that. But there's really been, technology's come such a long way in being HIPAA compliant, and the cloud is safe. We don't have to have everything on-prem. We can do things in the cloud, and then we can really utilize a lot of these tools that can help us dig into all of that great data that we have, that will give us those insights that we need, and then power those strategic decisions to make sure that we are set up for a sustainable future.
I think that is such an incredible point of the fact that we're already collecting all of this information. How do we make it kind of work for us in a meaningful and value add kind of way? I did not know that only 5% of healthcare data is being used. That is ridiculous to me, knowing that this data can be used not only from a workforce efficiency perspective, but also from, patient personalization and patient care. So I think there's a really huge area of opportunity there. So I'm glad that you called that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, outcomes, you think about population health. I mean, there's so much information that we can garner if we are pulling the right data points and using them in the right way. Microsoft has a whole responsible AI practice, which is really, the first of its kind in the technology space. And, that is also really key to the work that we are doing, because we know that as part of the quintuple aim, we need to be looking at health equity. And right now, that is a big factor in a lot of ways. It's a factor in the way that we care for patients. It's also a factor in the way that we employ people. We need to be looking into diverse talent pools. We need to be looking at direct pipeline and pathway programs in traditionally underserved areas. That's going to help the health population in those areas, as well as provide, additional job opportunities and increase the talent pools for the health system. So it's really a win-win-win there. And there's a way that we can do that by strategically using a lot more of these data points and using them in a proactive storytelling way to really make sure that we have the effectiveness that we are all striving for.
Absolutely. And I think, I love that you're calling out data, because I think that is, the next frontier for a lot of us within the healthcare space of how do we really start to leverage this data and what it can do for us. Are there any other big areas of opportunity that you're kind of seeing to really, drive the healthcare forward, but also maybe more specifically like the healthcare workforce forward, in addition to leveraging data?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, again, a lot of lessons learned that have come out from COVID and this, 2.5 years that we've all been through it now, it's really pushed a lot to, virtual and telehealth. I think that is going to be another really, really key building block for all health systems. We need to figure out how to do virtual health better. We need to figure out, especially in rural communities, how to do virtual care better. We need to make sure that patients aren't having to drive 2 hours to get service. I saw a statistic recently, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was something like half of the counties in the state of Texas do not have a primary care practitioner within that county, which is just mind-blowing that we don't even have basic services. So we really need to think about how can we provide safe, reliable, quality care in these areas, especially if we're seeing population shifts move around. So I think, not just using the data for the workforce, but really crafting creative strategies and data-driven strategies about how we can expand virtual health and telehealth out, especially into those rural communities, to make sure, again, that we are providing, safe quality care, and that we are bringing up the health equity in all of these areas.
100%. And I think you bring up a really good point. I think kind of in the height of the pandemic, virtual care kind of became like the Band-Aid solution because that was the only solution, but now it's kind of here to stay. So we really need to develop the infrastructure around it to make it a standalone and not just, a temporary fix, which I think is, I'm really glad that you kind of were able to speak to that as well, especially how do we kind of make it and design it for all. And so I know that we're kind of close to the top of the hour, but we always love to end our conversations with my favorite question. What are some lessons learned from your career, or any words of wisdom that you have, either something that a mentor had told you or anything that you just want to share with our community?
Absolutely. So I've been really fortunate to have some great mentors throughout my career. So I would say first word of advice is to find you one.
Nice.
And
Like it.
don't wait for one to come to you. Go
Mhm.
out there, ask all the questions, really attach yourself to someone and learn how they do things, watch how they do things, hear how they do things. That is so critical to growing your career. I had my very first mentor who put me in scrubs and made me walk around a trauma one ICU on top of that. So I saw things that I never ever in my life had seen before.
Mhm.
So that was also really helpful. I think you can't sit in your ivory tower,
Mhm.
regardless of, if you're in administration in the health system, or if you're in consulting, or if you're in technology, you need to be there in the bunny suits, walking the floors of the operating room with the scrub techs. You
Mhm.
can't pretend that you can separate yourself from that and still give meaningful outcomes. But another really great mentor that I had told me this phrase before, and it is something that anyone who has worked with me over the last 5 years has heard me repeat over and over again. And that is proceed until apprehended. And I think that is
Ooh.
especially so important for women, because a lot of times we ask for permission, or we wait for someone to call on us. And we need to be driving the force. We need to be leading the change. And you assume that it is always a yes until you are apprehended. And so that is the way that I work. That's the way that I do business. That's the way that I encourage all of my peers and people that work for me to work as well. Is please go and do. And if you ever get to a point where I need to pull you back in, I will pull you back in, but proceed until
I
apprehended.
love that. It's one of those sayings of like ask for forgiveness, not permission. I think that is incredible. And what a way to kind of cap off our conversation. Thank you so much, Mandy, for really just providing your insights, especially around, this concept of the workforce within healthcare. I think I've definitely learned a ton. So I really appreciate you taking the time. Please be sure, everyone, to join us next week for Frame Fertility. Have a really great conversation there. We also have our symposium tomorrow. All of the registration information is in the chat, so please be sure to check that out. We're also releasing a new podcast tomorrow as well. Wanted to give one last shout out to our sponsors, Goodwin and Witham, and of course to Mandy for sponsoring this, or for posting and guesting this amazing conversation. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye, everyone.